All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Combo Couch. Pasta Jarduli here. Fee is on assignment. She'll be back Wednesday to hold things down. But until then, I went out and hit my comrade on the shoulder, said, grab your suit and melon. Get in there. We need you. And she said, no doubt. So she's here, ready to rock and roll. You know her. You love her. Brave New Future. Roar Media. Roar Media's finest. Amber King is in the building. How you doing, Amber?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I hope that introduction was okay for you.
Yes, it's a very rare Monday, Wednesday, or Friday where I am not cheating on work, watching shows and listening, and
You're actually
doing all those
cheating
things
on
I
work
do. So
with the
yeah.
show. That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything you want to talk about the new year? Maybe a New Year's resolution you got going out there so we can get started. Give some people some time to hit the like button, hit the share button. Guys, you know we're over on Rumble. All the links are down below in the subscription over there. If you're a Rockfin Premium subscriber, you can go over and watch it on Rockfin. There's only a couple over there, so please let's do some sharing right now. It's a small crowd today. I don't know if everybody's back to work or
No,
they're
I think
just kind of
everybody's
taking
probably.
vacation.
I think they're sleeping still
Sleeping at 11 o'clock?
because it's day after holiday. It's your last day. Tomorrow's like back to the grind for most people. So um,
They're taking it slow today.
I think people the schedule's off. It's not noon. It's West Coast time here, so I think people are just kind of start having a lazy day. I think.
We got some great comments in there. Gabriel Ramirez, he's in there. Newly elected, just won a seat. He is now a city councilor person. That is awesome. Yeah, Gabriel Ramirez, fam, we love you. I haven't seen you in so long. What's up, fam? Craig and Fiorella, happy New Year. Much love and much respect. Much love and respect to you. I'm very glad you got through. I never thought they would allow you to hold any type of office, but now you're there, and that is awesome, and you can do some great work in your new job. Thank you, Gabriel Ramirez. We love you. Like I was saying, Amber, you got any New Year's resolution you want to talk about?
I am hoping to work on my foreign languages. I got to get caught up with my daughter in a few. I hope to travel more. I am also hoping to hit the gym more. So
Well, yes.
pretty typical. But I'm also I'm going to keep doing what I always do, which is try and scare the shit out of people about what could possibly be happening that we're not paying attention to, mostly in regards to the technocratic takeover that we're currently in. I just saw a report that what was it 70% of the of the world global economies are in recession. Congratulations, it's day two. The markets aren't even open, and you've hit the recession mark.
The DARPA, I think, files or of sorts are coming out. Steve went over a little bit of those today. What they plan to do in the future, to quell and stop, gatherings or protests and whatnot. January 6th, in my mind, was just all about making sure that they had everything in place to stop a real uprising if it ever comes to fruition. So, a lot of things to look forward to in 2023. My New Year's resolution is to not water any more dead flowers. Excuse me. I've used this term before, and I don't mean that in so much as a negative, is that I want to pay attention to the and give the water and love to the flowers that I appreciate and the people who are close to us. That's why it's so awesome that you're on the show to kick off the new year. Amber King here with me. No fee today. She'll be back Wednesday. And I also put up Lucky Burrito. She said, Pasta and Amber. Lucky, we lost a loved one yesterday in Peaches. I don't know if you guys heard about it.
Oh
The
no.
cockatoo. Yeah. Really sucks. But it's like I told Lucky, and Lucky had a Peaches, I think, for 11 or 13 years. I can't remember, a long time. Don't know what was what. Thought possibly that they could have said the bird was a little bit younger than it was when she first took the bird in. I think it was the third Erno, but she just gave that bird an amazing life.
Yeah.
And that bird probably lived a lot longer than it wanted to because it had a great mother like Lucky and Steve. So my love and respect go out to you guys. My heart goes out to you. I know what it's like to lose a family member, especially so unexpectedly, So sorry to you, Lucky, but you gave Peaches the cockatoo, an amazing life, and I'm glad you did. If you want to send over a picture of something, we can show at the very end, just so we can remember Peaches, because it was a special animal, and you're a special person and gave it a special life. So thank you, Lucky, and thank you for always holding it down with Jilly Love over here. Okay. So this is up there too as well. Hey guys, did you guys see that the NIH quietly added ivermectin as an antiviral to treat COVID? Who's going to apologize to Jimmy Dore? Anyone taking bets? I don't know. They can apologize to us.
I don't think they ever actually took it away. It was just at the very bottom of the page. And that was kind of the rub the entire time. It was, it definitely wasn't getting recommended. It definitely wasn't getting a $40,000, payment boost on your Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements. So
yeah, it was part of the guidelines the whole time, I think.
Yeah,
you know
they
what I'm
never
saying?
took it down.
I don't know. Yeah, let's see that. I don't know. But if you're saying they never took it down, I remember it was there. I was like, guys, ivermectin's like number 13 in the NIH guidelines. I mean, they kind of diss it, but it's there. And that's to cover their own ass, to say that, oh, we said this the whole time. You know what I'm saying?
We didn't say not to. We just made fun of you a little.
That's it.
Yeah, that was one of my thoughts this morning. I was actually thinking about the whole January 6th, and my thought on that is how successful was Force the Vote, that they got that freaked out to push January 6th, because they knew this was building and they didn't want their little progressive base to get pissed off. Yeah. I really think that was a huge impetus. So congratulations to everybody. It backfired, but it worked. And we'll never get the healthcare we want.
Were you there? When were we there? You weren't there January 6th with us, were you, or no?
Not on the ground, but we'd been doing organizing, and I was heavily involved with the Washington Bernie-crats at the time, and we were writing letters and putting out press statements.
Yeah, we were there together, I think in March, following after that. March, we were all there for the Fuck Censorship and the Julian Assange event, and that's where I got to see Amber speak for the first time. And man, did you rock the mic. Amber would always start, I want to remind y'all, you're on stolen ground. So let's just start shit off like that.
Especially in DC. Like, I think it's the place that's the most forgotten about in terms of, where did this land come from? I think it's important.
The dark horse, okay, they're literally saying it does not help with COVID. They're saying it does. Now they're saying it does work for COVID. Literally 2 months before, about a month and a half before the dark horse with Pierre Corey, when he went on the dark horse with Brett Weinstein, I believe his name is, right? They did that video. Yes. No, the one with Dr. Corey.
Oh, with Dr. Corey.
It was
they
Dr.
did him
Corey.
back. So.
Yeah. So Dr. Corey went on. He did that whole thing. And that's where Matt Orfalia did an amazing video, pretty much highlighting that. We did a video 6 weeks before that, me and James Roguski, and we talked about ivermectin. I wasn't a big believer of it until, I heard about it, but I was like, kind of like, you're like, well, whatever. But when I got COVID, my only mistake was I took it on day 2 or 3, and it really helped out. Had I known, I would have had that. Had I believed completely, I'd already done stories on it, but had I believed completely, I would have had ivermectin probably stocked up somehow at my house. When I go to Latin America now, it's easy to get it over there. It's so cheap. It's like 50 cents a pill, and I stack up. I got some ivermectin here. I got some from Nicaragua. I got some from Colombia. I got some from Mexico, and I got some from Brazil. So I got all different ivermectins in my freaking house.
That sounds like a good potency test right in your cabinet.
Oh yeah, right here.
Yeah, no, I see. I used to work at public health, and when we worked at public health, we gave out ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine all the time, because in Alaska you had a lot of people moving around and traveling seasonally, a lot of islanders, and just a ton of people cruising around the Pacific and beyond. So, and because it's such a working place, people would come up there, and it was just kind of mandatory. You get a TB test. Almost everybody had TB. They got hydroxychloroquine. It cost 3 cents a pill. And ivermectin, all that was handed out like candy. But the problem is, how the system's set up, you're not supposed to have anything before you're actually sick. You're supposed to get sick first, then wait, then be really sick, then go to the doctor, then get a prescription. So it is almost insane to be able to try and stock up on anything unless it's something you've already been prescribed. And that's where, we ran into a downfall. But, I cannot commend enough. If you have a compounding pharmacy in your neighborhood, don't ever step foot in a Rite Aid. Don't ever step foot in any other kind of Walmart or Walgreens or whatever, right? CVS. Go to your compounding local pharmacies, because that's where real medicine is made. Custom blends for people.
Well, I want to say welcome to Vicky Lynn, who is in the Rumble chat. Vicky Lynn had the day off, so her and the husband I'm very jealous of, they got to go to the Waffle House for breakfast this morning, ran some errands. We didn't see her, but now she's here with us for this Combo Couch show. And I think that we got like 40 people out of the gate on the Rumble because it has Lula officially sworn in. So I think a couple people are kind of probably hanging over and watching. And I'm glad if you are a conservative or a populist right Trumper or whatever you want to call yourself. Once again, I don't demonize anybody for their beliefs or their position and stuff, but if you're over here today because you felt the election was unfair and you bought into some of the propaganda in the market that was coming out from the Bannonites and the Matthew Termans, I hope you realize, how you got the wool pulled over your eyes. Yeah, you didn't get, obviously the proper proof or kind of like receipts to the cheating that you claimed were there just because it was a machine. It was a very vague general statement on the way they tried to frame this whole Brazilian election, that it was stolen because it was a DRE machine. But when they were doing the reporting, they were still saying ballots, and they were saying stuff that was just not factual, saying that they didn't have the military didn't have the codes to check the source codes. They wouldn't give that to them. That's bullshit. They didn't flag any machine. I haven't seen one receipt that said Bolsonaro had a zeroed out report. And the way the election's set, the way the election is run, that where it's cast, it's counted. Even if it's on a DRE machine, they still post the results out of each room right there. So you'll be able to catch the cheating in fair time, in real time. You'll be able to say, we're going to flag this machine. We want to see it. You would present it to the public like we want to see these machines. They didn't do anything like that. They just made these vague comments after the election. And an election that I said this before, Bolsonaro was a huge underdog. For him to get as far as he did, to get as many votes as he did, he overperformed. But a lot of people bought into the whole, Lula's a criminal. He doesn't have a following. He's like Joe Biden. So false. Lula was a two-time president. He had an 87% approval rate, Amber, when he left office. He was unjustifiably jailed. We saw the receipts.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn Greenwald did some amazing reports on this on Operation Car Wash. The State Department of the United States was caught with their hand in the cookie jar, putting him in jail. So therefore, he couldn't run again. So when they throw these accusations out and these just vague comments to people who don't know what's going on in Brazil, it holds. And more than anything, Amber, I want your opinions, because what Bannon did, what his disciples did, the Jap Posobiaks, the Matthew Termans, and I'm calling these people out. And anytime they want to have a conversation with me, anytime they want to come on my show, anytime I want to go, if they want to have me on their show, I will talk about Brazil every single Wednesday, Tuesday. They don't know the election system. They didn't study it. Matthew Terman didn't know what was going on. We did. That's what the Combo Couch does. In Glenn Greenwald's little video on Brazil and explaining why Lula was popular and why people followed Lula, and also explaining why Lula is not a communist, which is very important. They didn't understand the whole, Glenn didn't explain the system. I can tell you verbatim why I think the election was fair. If it was rigged, what would happen, how you would catch it. I can explain all that. But this whole, they're a communist, and literally Bannon's going out there and saying China helped steal the election in Brazil. What are your thoughts? Do you think, is my theory sound when I say the communist argument, right, is about splitting the people up, being divisive? It then becomes about capitalist versus communist, and Lula wasn't even a communist.
Yeah, no, not even close. He's about, as shit-lived as Bernie Sanders right now, I'd say. I mean, very similar. He's got that beloved, persona. I wasn't on the ground with you, but I kind of take it like this. I feel like people want so badly to justify what's happening in their reality that they're looking for it anywhere else. And the whole, China communist Russia thing just plays right into a Mike Pompeo for 2024 campaign, because they know Trump's damaged. They know, regardless, like there's the vitriol doesn't help anybody, the drama, and I think most people are seeing through a lot of that. But it's, again, we're going to end up in this dual-sided thing. So you're looking for what fits my reality, what serves that purpose. And so I think it's just a lot of projection, honestly. We know there's how many European interests are in Brazil. I mean, the entire grain supply of Brazil is controlled by China and by Europe. All of Europe's meat is raised on grain from Brazil. It's been Monsantoized. It's, completely corporate sellout. So it's just really, to think that anything else different is happening, it's not.
Yeah. There's always been a fight to get control of Brazil. United States has a long history, supporting the coup in 1964, the military coup. That's why this whole talk about, the military needs to get involved was very kind of touchy for some people. A lot of people in the States, a lot of the populists, right, the conservatives, the MAGA movement, I think they're still believing in the possibility of, military tribunals and Gitmo being used to put Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Lindsey Graham there. But I just don't think it's factual. Yeah. I'm not opposed to either. I am not opposed to either. Listen, I don't want the military running shit, but if the military was going to hold some people accountable for their war crimes, I'm down for that. But, that's it. And by the way, we're looking at, as you can go ahead and take the mic here, but just so people know, we're showing the pictures of the inauguration. Lula's colors were red and white, and, people try to say that he's like Biden. No, he's not. He was pretty popular. And don't get me wrong, shit lib to boot now. I mean, he's not the guy, I once liked that was about feeding the poor. Mm-hmm. Vaccines are coming in, Amber. They're coming, and they're coming hard. And Lula was over at the G20 and the B20, signing on for the digital passport. So that shit, and like you said, in Sao Paulo, when I met a lot of Lula supporters, they were Bernie Sanders shit libs that were wearing masks outside, that wanted to mandate the vaccine, that didn't care about ivermectin, right? They were just like Bernie Sanders shit libs. It was the people in the favelas that I met and I fell in love with that had a close tie to Lula, simply because Lula put food on the table. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and you can't discredit that. That's so important in a country like Brazil, when the poverty is so drastic. Kind of what I see eventually is going to be the US, the way things are going. It's so drastic. You need to do anything to get your people alive and keep them alive. And he was a good president. He was that liberal, and he was that good of a president that they had to pull up the whole, throw him in jail stunt. And they were really hoping for that, like, Republican stiff arm to come in with Bolsonaro. But then in the meantime, the United States has had this switch. We've had this complete switch where people who support Biden would have been amazing Reagan Republicans in the 80s. And so because of this switch that's occurred in the United States, that changed the dynamic of how we view what's happening in the global South.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about the whole, Lula's connections to, what he did. Like, they're accusing this guy of being a communist, right? So I'd say he's not a communist, but he's a compromise between capitalist and communist. There was a lot of child labor in Brazil when Lula got in. So his plan was to go to a family in the favelas and say, hey, listen, I know you need your child to work to help support the family, but if you get him up to date with his vaccines and you put him in school, we're going to give you a stipend. We're going to give you money. And that's what he did. He gave families money for getting their kids into school. And just like this country, Brazil has that kind of resentment from the working class to the poor class. They don't, you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. It's the George Carlin. It goes, we got the poor class there just to keep the working class in line, keep them showing up to them jobs. And they really do. There is that resentment there. And Lula would talk about it. He goes, there would be people resenting that you'd see the poorest of poor now at an airport, being able to fly and go on vacation. They didn't like that, and they didn't like the handouts. And these people, while they're working their ass off, they see people in the favelas getting a little extra. They were really resentful for that. And then you have the what I call the owner class. I believe that our socialist leftist friends call them the bourgeoisie or the bourgeois class, whatever you want to call them. I call them the owner class. The owner class who own the shops and all the other small businesses and whatnot, they kind of split. Normally they walk in lockstep. And this is something I got from Camila Escalante on the ground over there when she had shown me an article and a report for some people from the MST. And why you saw some of the banks go over to Lula's side is because they were so done with the instability. And you talk about mad social unrest and civil unrest in Brazil. I don't want to ever talk down about homelessness. I say this all the time. It's awful in the United States, 750,000 and growing. But what I saw in Sao Paulo was very, very bad. And it was more dangerous in Sao Paulo than it was in the favelas, because the favelas at least had their own law and order. But that country was under some serious chaos. Now, there are people who are Bolsonaristas, whatever you call them, that like the fact that he stood up against the WHO, that like the fact that he told the WEF to go scratch.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, they then think he should have been held blame for the struggles during COVID, that it wasn't his fault, that more people ended up on the streets, that more people died. He did at one point try to get ivermectin out to a bunch of people, but we've spoke to people in Brazil, and a high-ranking doctor told me, Amber, she's like, it doesn't make a difference who's the president of Brazil. They have the same problems that the United States does. And that's Big Pharma has a grip on the country. So no matter what, Big Pharma is going to be calling the shots. And just like the regions, you have different regions, and people play politics with it like they did in the state. So that was another big problem over there. Brazil's got its own problems. The most important thing, I think, Amber, is that we don't get involved, that we pulled back. And what the Bannonites are doing, they're being uber divisive. The communist versus capitalist, and they're manufacturing consent for, once again, military intervention in these countries, which we don't need across the board. So even though it does suck that Lula's getting in, I think it's even sucking more that they're still keeping up this rhetoric and telling these lies and avoiding guys like me who know they won't have them on their shows. And then, you know what I'm saying? Because I'll eat them up and chew them up and spit them out because I understand the election systems. That's what the combo couch does.
Well, think about all the money that's played into both sides in the United. I mean, what did we just have the most expensive election cycle ever? And, which kind of feeds right into the whole FTX scandal. We had so much money. We could have, until that money stops being spent on any electoral politics, nothing changes worldwide. I don't see any change in that. It's just, that's good. Between that and the MIC, like, we're screwed. Doesn't matter what we think, feel, believe, the games we play, that money is going to rule the day. And that money is pharma, that money is K Street. It's a big game, and they're going to tighten it up and screw the rest of us in the meantime.
I'm going to play a little clip over here. This is Gustavo Petro. Now, he wasn't allowed in the country. It's beautiful to see how Brazilian people received our president, Gustavo Petro, at the inauguration of Lula da Silva. Now that Latin America is more united than ever before. Once again, I said, like, that compromise between the capitalists and the communists, that's who Lula is. He got permission from the Bolsonaro presidency. That is no longer, after the signatures yesterday, which we'll show, to allow Colombia's government, Gustavo Petro, come in, and Venezuela's government, and Maduro and all these other people, parts of their cabinet, to come on in. So they came on in. This is Gustavo Petro just walking through and showing some love. You guys know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the share button. Convo Couch is here. Amber King on the couch with us. Thank you so much, guys. You know the ways to help the show. there is a picture I wanted to show, but what are your thoughts about the pink tide that's coming in? I mean, we would be traditionally called leftists back in the days, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
but now where we're at, it's a little bit different. I don't think that you're is like where Fee is. You know, we call each other comrades, but I don't think we're like, Fee's an anarcho-communist, right? And some of our friends, we have a lot of socialist friends and communist friends, and I love them too as well. I think the reason why I love them is because they stick to the economics. It's what I call the economic Marxism, not the cultural Marxism, which a lot of Marxists will claim that is a CIA creation and used to devise the people. What are your thoughts on this whole situation with people like Gustavo Petro and all them coming on over?
Well, I mean, I for one, I don't like labels anymore. I think any term, any label, any thought can be corrupted and obfuscated through the political mechanism. So that's what I see. Like, and I'm reading some of the comments and people, we had this shift in the United States. Like, you can't not look at the last 30 years and see a massive shift in party policy and the label shifted. So I think good people still want to do good in their country. I just think that the mechanism set up for people to make actual meaningful change has to happen on a very local level, and it'll never be done from the top down.
Yeah. Cultural Marxism is not a real thing. Cultural is local characteristics when people say socialism with local characteristics. Cultural Marxism is people trying to mash up postmodernism with communism, but it isn't a thing. Well, I mean, that the marketing is a thing. That's what they're
Yeah.
pushing, Mr. Bill Bradley. They are pushing it badly. I've been in the favelas when we've talked about Marxism. They've showed us a Marxist book, but once again, it's all economical. In fact, they're very kind of like socially conservative. They
Mm.
go to church on Sundays. They don't necessarily are down with gay marriage. They're not really cool with abortion, and they don't understand the whole transgender issue we have going on over here. I mean, a lot of people like that, where they were like, really, that's going on? Not to say that they're ignorant or stupid, or just that's where they're at, and who are we to push that our ways upon anybody in those countries? So, I
I
mean,
mean,
good.
Scotland just tried to, that whole kerfuffle over the weekend of Scotland, the what was it, their constable or whatever, doing the whole minor attracted persons labeling from an office. Things have gotten really weird in the world of labels and
Yeah.
what's culturally acceptable. So and again, I agree that we need to just go back to very, very local situations and build your networks, build your communities up, because that's what's fallen apart the most. And then when they see things in power coming to threaten them, like Haiti and other countries, they'll come in and squash it. And we see this happening, and they're hoping to get that lockstep agenda of the you know technocratic panopticon. If they get all the locks in place, if the WHO passes their next round of measures, it won't matter, because they'll have full autonomy of all countries.
Yeah. Um, Now it's kind of it's a little weird because a lot of people will say that Lula was the wants to wants to nationalize things. He's the socialist, but there was a lot of privatization going on in Brazil, especially when it came to agriculture. And this is what they were telling us. We sat with the MST for like 3 hours. I mean, we wanted to hear everything they had to say. And, and this is what Fiorello would say. We'll pick your globalism, and where people are going, oh, Lula's a globalist, the WEF. Well, we got videos of Bolsonaro going to the WEF, speaking to as well, special guests being introduced by Klaus Schwab, so I mean, there's that there. And allowing all these countries come in, these multinational corporations. You said something about Monsanto in Brazil.
Mhm.
That happened right under Bolsonaro's watch. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely. And they'd been pushing for it for decades, and that's why Lula had to go. That's what I'm saying. They'll play any fucking card to get their guy. They want the policy in, they want the money control, and they'll throw you in jail if they need to get somebody else in there to get it, and then they'll pull you out when you get too radical for what they want. Either way, they'll play that game. You always play both sides. So the chemical cartel, as I like to call them, because they operate as such worldwide, is going to pick your president. They're going to pick your healthcare. They're going to pick your food. And if you don't, then the next guy's out, and they'll keep pushing that. That's why we're in Ukraine. That's why we've got, dangerous conditions at the border, is because of our policies going in and banana republicing. They did the same thing in Guatemala that they're doing in Brazil. And so what happens is you start having all these liver failure deaths and cancer deaths, and the skyrocketing rate, and the nuclear family starts blowing up because dad died and the uncle died. And so then the young kids have to come in, fill the void, go to work early, because nobody's able to support the family. You've eroded that family structure, that community structure, and you've got kids fighting with them, in the streets with guns, and pushing to try and, get somewhere else because shit just gets so bad. But it's all for our chemical companies. It's all for the pharmaceutical contracts. It's all about agriculture control. And it always has been. And hey, if Bill Gates gets to come in and, squeeze a little infertility at the process, or, start a new disease, he's all down for that. As much money as you want.
I was trying to find a picture of, it was an important picture. It was a picture of Gustavo Petro and Gilbert Hernandez. I believe it's Gilbert, or is it Mr. President Hernandez? He was running for Hernandez. Man, I can't find it. But it's after the election, and Hernandez had, Rodolfo Hernandez, thank you so much. Rodolfo Hernandez had lost to Gustavo Petro. They took a picture together, holding hands, showing unity. And I had hoped to see that picture between Lula and Bolsonaro. But now I realize it is far from happening. And I got to also, to this, while I'm ragging on all the Bannonites and all the conservatives and everybody there, let me just say that the independent left that was reporting on a lot of this stuff had their nose so far up Lula's ass that they couldn't even criticize him for the negative things. They thought it was okay for, like, if he would bring upon a mandate, and the way, he was connected to the banks. And they would constantly reference January 6th as a insurrection. I mean, these people drove me crazy,
Trucker
and
convoys came up again, and
it was just it was so just like, really, to tell you the truth, sometimes it sucks to not play team sports and just try to present things in an honest, fair way, because you just don't win. It's easier to play team sports. That's all I got to say. So,
but I'm so grateful you guys were there. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing. It's if we don't have this level of reporting, of honesty, of calling the shit like you see it, rather than who's paying to play,
Yeah.
we really, all hope is lost in any amount of journalism in the United States. And it's bad right now. One of my questions I wanted to ask was, who's going to be replacing Fauci this year? And now Elon's threatening the Fauci files to be dropped.
I heard it's going to come this week.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Let's overpower January 6th with that this year.
I've been a left-wing progressive liberal since the 1960s, but all the labels have been co-opted by the clown show of power.
100%.
1000%, Douglas Burns.
I haven't voted for a Democrat in a long time.
Yeah. I voted for a Republican.
I'm from Alaska. We're a little different. We're a little more libertarian, a little more independent, and plan to stay that way.
Some guy named Dr. Ouchie. Yeah, it's not Fauci anymore. It's Ouchie. And I'm there with you too, guys. All the labels have been removed. It isn't what it used to be. I voted for Steve Marchant in Nevada for Secretary of State because he was going to bring some election reforms to play. But that whole election was another one. Yeah.
We're literally being Microsoft managed to political oblivion. Especially in the DNC, but it's everywhere. It's pervasive. Poor Washington State, where I'm at, is just getting the shit kicked out of it thanks to the liberal left, or so-called, but
No shit.
none of them feel like anybody I used to ever know. It's very odd.
Yeah, it's not the same party. The shit libs or the libtards or whatever they are not left. They are just they're cucks to the deep state, and I don't want anything to do with them anymore. They're so fucking bad. It's like no matter what, they're just so bad. Let's get into this over here.
The war
Next
party.
topic up. Here we go. We brought in Amber King to give us the real reporting. Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF's connection to the Biden's White House revealed. So what's going on?
Man, if this isn't burning Washington D.C. to the ground, nothing will. and you know, I know this story keeps getting brought up, but to me, it's the biggest fraud I've ever seen. You know, in any kind of way, any kind of volume, with as many high people connected to it, and I just can't believe they were this open about it. I don't know. So Sam Bankman-Fried, who's sitting in his parents' house in Santa Clarita or something, on $250 million bail bond that he put up his parents' house for. Such a nice kid. So he had multiple visits with the White House, not with Biden, but with Biden's handlers. This is the K Street, you know, the podestas of the Biden White House. And he knew, I mean, from looking back now, what we knew he knew they were going down in March of 2022. Yet all this money was liquidated. All this money was funneled through Ukraine, through FTX, and just pushed down. So, I mean, why? I mean, this is kind of like, you know, Epstein Clinton White House visit kind of bullshit. It's very, very sus. So he took, I think, 8 meetings. So this Steve Ricchetti is a classic guy you want to go look up. Go check out his name. See what his connections are. See where he's running things. This is totally your K Street operative, and wow, just kind of insane. Nobody does this. This was they were, and the storyline that they keep pushing in the press and the mainstream is that he was trying to put additional controls on crypto, and that's what they were talking about. And that is the biggest line of bullshit I've ever read. 100% they were talking about Democratic campaign donations for the midterms. 100 fucking percent. There's no way. These people don't give a shit about banking law. They work for, you know, the criminal cartel on K Street. This is all about where their donations, so he, you know, this whole thing is just a controlled demolition.
Yeah, it almost seems like this was like the meeting. This is where they had, okay, this is where we're taking the money, this is where we're sending the money, this is what you're doing, you know, and Sam Bankman-Fried just did what he had to do, what he was told to do by the handlers, and yeah. Crazy. So Ricchetti is the guy we should look into. What is his position at the White House? Do you know? Or
it is. Let me pull up officially. I think he's chief of staff. Let me see.
Well, here's another question too. While we're asking, because it says that SBF will be arraigned in New York on the court on January 3rd, which is tomorrow. 2023, he faces up to 115 years of prison for his alleged role in stealing of depositor funds and wire fraud. He was recently extradited from the Bahamas, where FTX was headquartered, and he was arrested weeks after the FTX collapse, conveniently 6 hours before the hearing, so he didn't have to go in. He was released on a $250 million bond after landing in the United States.
And we've already had one judge have to step down over conflict of interest. Federal Judge Ronnie Abrams stepped down last Friday, which was rather funny because everybody was going, what the like, this is not good.
I have this little video here. Do you want to play this video?
Yeah, sure. Let's play it.
Let's do that. I'm going to mute me up. Check it out, guys. Speak to you soon here.
In just weeks, Sam Bankman-Fried has gone from giving interviews to media outlets out of his luxury apartment in the Bahamas to his parents' property in Palo Alto, California, via an 8-night stay in jail. We've watched this case unfold with surprising speed. So how did we get so far so fast? Part of that comes down to Bankman-Fried's views on extradition. At the outset of his arrest on December 12th, he vowed to fight being sent back to the US to face fraud charges. But on December 19, Bankman-Fried told a Bahamas court he was ready to waive his right to do so. That move appeared to catch even his local lawyer off guard. 2 days later, his decision was formalized and he was flown to New York in the custody of US agents. And by December 22, Sam Bankman-Fried walked out of a Manhattan federal court free on $250 million bail, a deal that may have been struck based on his willingness to return to the States. He's now required to stay at his parents' home and submit to electronic monitoring before his next court appearance on January 3rd. What prosecutors do next could provide the most intrigue. Two of Bankman-Fried's closest associates, that's the former Alameda head Carolyn Ellison and former FTX CTO Gary Wang, have already pleaded guilty to fraud and are cooperating. We could see more star witnesses emerge to test Bankman-Fried's argument that the collapse of FTX was purely down to management missteps. I'm Annabelle Drulers, Bloomberg News.
No, I don't buy that story. I mean, obviously there's been some interesting moves, but this is no way when your parents are the people who have taught every single Ivy League class on tax law and accounting principles that you turn around and siphon all this money for the government through your crypto exchange so that you can enact crypto regulation, you can push in CBDCs, and in the meantime, you just happen to funnel millions and millions of dollars to push COVID, to push the lockdown, to push the WEF agenda, to push, again, the largest spending in our country's history on a terrible election. I mean, it's absolute insane. And then, I was just going to run the whole thing off QuickBooks by myself. Yeah. Totally makes sense.
That was funny. That was the funny part. And, it said they've had multiple meetings. And he was a Ricchetti. I don't know how way you say it. Ricchetti. He's a senior advisor, right? So this guy is up there. He's no small potatoes in the White House. And this dude, look at this dude. This dude needs to go to jail forever. Sam Bankman-Fried, is it up? Make sure it's up. Cool, you guys can see it. Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX execs donated a total of $70 million to political campaigns in 18 months, according to Open Secret. So this is what you're talking about, these elections. $70 million. Has anybody publicly that we know about given the money back or said anything?
I think there was like 3 Democratic senators I have the list. They're giant. And that's just the money we know about. We don't know about any of the dark money. And we know he was funding every single hit piece on Ivermectin was funded through his brother's
foundation,
political science bullshit. Yeah. This just reeks to high heaven of the WEF, of the Rhodes Scholar program, involving all of the Ivy League schools. This is a Bill Gates playbook, like if I've ever seen one.
It also says that Bankman-Fried himself, no, it's not himself, because he used everybody else's money that he stole.
He didn't make any money.
Yeah. He lost money. He stole your money. And that's something that John Ray did say in the hearing, the congressional hearing for FTX, the one that 6 hours before SBF was supposed to go and testify at. Well, he was taken into custody then. So, one of the congressional men said he must have a friend at DHS to do that so he doesn't have to face the music. And let's be honest, all those people, 75% of the people that were there had taken money from FTX or Sam Bankman-Fried or a form of that. Would you say 11 out of 13 chairmen of the committee?
It's just the amount of corruption is just insane. And so all of this, why they didn't seize, they bought 19 houses between him and his parents in different shell corporations. I mean, it's like, I think somebody said up to 400 different shell companies involved.
Yeah.
They knew exactly what they were doing. And
Oh,
they
yeah.
didn't take any of those properties, yet they let him post bail on them.
Oh, yeah. And it says that Bankman-Fried $40 million to mostly liberal efforts. That's the way I want to
Yep.
say it's the Democrats. While fellow exec Ryan Salame, or however you say, gave $23 million to primarily Republicans. So across the board, $63 million. And I get that most people go, oh, well, Democrats got more than Republicans. Does that really matter? They were all in it. It's almost like the whole Ukraine situation, Amber. I mean,
Well, they were pushing money from Ukraine.
yeah,
Magically, FTX was the chosen crypto exchange for all of the Ukrainian funding. So all
yeah,
of those funds were a large portion of them, what isn't going in suitcases somewhere, were going through FTX back into crypto
yeah,
for Ukraine, which was then being stolen. So it was 100%,
yeah.
full circle money laundering on an international level. And I've even seen some hit pieces in the mainstream media about, oh, well, corporations have made risky choices in the past. He was just being a little risky.
Yeah, yeah, right.
It's total bullshit. He
People
is
who
just
didn't get people, those are people who probably didn't get hurt in their money. They probably are just playing team sports, and once again want to just kind of justify all their stupid reasonings for supporting either one of these two parties over the last couple of years. So it's just ridiculous. Like I said, when it comes to Ukraine, if it wasn't for Lindsey Graham and John McCain going over there, whipping up this whole color revolution, supporting Nazis in early 2014, it wouldn't have been possible for the Democrats to come in, all their friends behind them, and start carpetbagging and just getting all this money out of Ukraine. It's disgusting. And then here's the last part. Yeah.
Pompeo is deeply, deeply involved in all of that. And the big push in 2014 in Ukraine was chemicals, agrochemicals, again, threatening to come into the breadbasket and destroy food supply. What has Putin done in Russia? He's banned GMOs. He doesn't have those chemicals. 30% of the United States organic food market was being imported from Russia.
That's interesting.
Prior to embargoes, because we don't produce enough. All our shit is toxic. We're sending it to China.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Critics are now scrutinizing the role of cryptocurrency in politics after FTX's dramatic demise.
Of course.
But we've said what they're going to do. They're going to be opportunistic about this. This isn't about really regulating cryptos to make sure it's a fair playing field. This is about making sure that they could squeeze people out and make it harder for them to get into other cryptos, except for their central bank digital currencies, the central bank digital, right? CBDCs. That's what it's all about, moving us into their digital currency. And the whole time too, as well, they were just looting the hen house. They were just taking money left and right.
And the fun thing I see also is now that I think the plug got pulled a little earlier than they were hoping for. And I think that you've seen a little bit of messiness from that, but everything else seems to be incredibly scripted throughout this entire process. But immediately, now that FTX is gone, now you've got BlackRock rolling in. Oh, here we are to rebuild. So we need a new funneling money system. So in comes BlackRock and the AI doing 70% of the trades on Wall Street to come rebuild Ukraine in the eyes of, the new Israel. It's going to be great.
Slava Ukraine, right?
The surveillance state. This is the CBD's surveillance state capitalism that they've always wanted. So every dollar's tracked and traced along with your pulse.
So this is from the New York Times, reported Wednesday. The Manhattan-based federal prosecutors are investigating whether Sam Bankman-Fried steered prices of Terra USD and Luna to benefit FTX and his Alameda hedge fund. Terra and Luna saw more than $50 billion in market value wiped out when they collapsed in May. That contributed to a wider crypto crash and eventually the implosion of FTX. You want to give us a little insight to what that means?
Yeah, certainly. So he would pump it up, inflate the price, and then pull out. Classic, bait and switch kind of move in the markets. And if you're following anything like, whale watches or things like that online, you can see when things are being manipulated. It's pretty, and that's part of this was, then he turned around and said he was gonna what was the smaller crypto he was gonna bail out.
Wasn't it BlockFi that he was? No, BlockFi was trying to buy them and then pulled the
Yep.
chain. But yeah.
But they were also investing in like this Moonstone Bank, which was out of this, tiny little post office like building in the middle of rural Washington.
Only one congressional member mentioned that. And you know who it was? It was the congressional member that Maxine Waters tried to cut out, and he went complaining for it. In fact, I'll pull that up. Why don't you read this over here? It said the Times reported the probe. Go ahead and start reading that. Can you read that? Can you see that? Or go ahead.
Absolutely. Is in its early stages and is part of a wider investigation into FTX's collapse and the potential misappropriation of billions of dollars of customer funds, which are now missing. Additionally, the Times confirmed in November, Bloomberg report that FTX was also being investigated for potentially violating U.S. money laws months before the collapse. So, I mean, we knew this collapse. A lot of people knew this collapse was happening in the springtime, and it just kind of imploded in November. But a lot of it really was designed. It had to make it to the elections. He dumped, I don't know, what was it, 10 million in the last week of the elections alone. At the same time, he knew he was filing for bankruptcy. Like, the gig was already up by then. And I think the best thing we can do, if anybody wants to help with politics right now, is go and pressure your local elected officials to return these fucking funds. Return them. Send them back in. Show me proof. I think that's the kind of political, we can talk labels, names, give money, but I think that kind of proof is actually a lot more important at holding people accountable. Is where is this money coming from? Follow the money. Follow the contracts all the time, and it'll lead you down every path. So I think that's a better way to get some accountability.
I want to show that Maxine Waters. This is it right here. Let me see. Pull it up really quick, guys, and then you can give us a little information about the bank he eventually will talk about. But it's right here. It says Town Hall. Representative Maxine Waters got testy after being called out for trying to cut the FTX hearing short before Representative Lance Gooden, Republican Texas, was allowed to ask questions.
I would like to enter into the record the closing statements from Ranking Member McHenry and myself. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. John Ray III.
Chairwoman Waters.
Presence here today.
Chairwoman Waters, I've not had an opportunity to testify or to question the witness.
I'd like to thank you for your presence.
Chairwoman Waters,
And for the
parliamentary inquiry.
yes.
Are all members entitled to question witnesses?
You are, and if you would like to miss the votes on the floor for everybody.
Hey, it's
just
the
one
chairwoman's
moment.
prerogative to call
Just
a recess.
1 moment, please.
That's your decision, not mine.
Just 1 moment, please. You may go right ahead and have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're certainly welcome, sir. I would like to enter into the record the closing.
She got testy. She got testy. And I'm going to go get his Representative Lance Goodman, see if it's up there. I'm going to go get his testimony. But why don't you talk a little bit about the bank that nobody mentioned except for him? And that's why I thought it was a little bit funny that she tried to cut him off, because nobody had mentioned that bank. And maybe she was trying to cut him off for a reason, that she didn't want that testimony coming out.
Oh, I'm sure. So yeah, very odd. It's out of this little town called Farmington, Washington, which is south of Spokane on the border with Idaho. And they were working on building up basically digital bank. And the place is tiny. Like, it looks like a 400 square foot post office, and that's their bank. But they were building this Moonstone Bank with its own, fund, and pushing a ton of tech money through it. So, because I'm in Washington State, so I started looking up their business filings. They had a bunch of, international bankers on the board of directors and out of Bellevue, Washington, and everybody who, the tech boom in Washington is still happening. It's starting to decline a little bit, but it's definitely still happening. If you're involved in biotech, if you're involved in, you know, space exploration, you're doing work in the Puget Sound area. If you're working on technology, and so there's a lot of money being pushed around, and I watch it daily in my day job. So it's very interesting to see these connections. We know our state reps here took a shit ton of money, but I really haven't been able to track the dark money donations, and that's, I think, the next fun piece of this is, where did the rest of the money go?
Yeah. Well, supposedly, and listen, I can make a living bagging on AOC, right? Because it's so easy to do, because he's such a phony and a fake. But during her testimony, she had talked about a window. She set out a timeline. And 25.5 hours before Sam Bankman-Fried gave it over to John Ray, who oversaw the Enron bankruptcy, who had stated, he's like, this is not like what they did in Enron, where they hid things from actual accounting sheets, and you had to go look and sniff where the money was going, and it was a little bit different in Enron.
Enron wasn't actually run business; it was a large.
They weren't using QuickBooks, that's for sure.
This wasn't 4 kids on a couch using QuickBooks.
Yeah, doing all types of amphetamines and having sex games too, as well. Like I said, if you're going to go buy that mansion that they put up for sale, do not go into the hot tub unless you get that thing looked upon. Yeah. But
there's a lot of squalene being used.
This was just straight up highway robbery. And I did find the testimony. So let's take a look at this. I'm interested to what you have to say. Have you seen this yet?
His testimony?
Yes.
No,
this is the only person who mentioned that bank. Once again, coincidence, or just was it meant to be trying to silence this particular congressman from speaking? Take a look.
To question the witness.
I'd like to thank you for your presence.
Chairwoman Waters,
And for the
parliamentary inquiry.
Yes.
Are all members entitled to question witnesses?
You are, and if you would like to miss the votes on the floor for everybody.
Hey, it's the chairwoman's prerogative to call a recess.
1 moment, please.
That's your decision, not mine.
Just 1 moment, please. You may go right ahead and have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're certainly welcome, sir.
Mr. Ray, earlier today you said FTX was one of the worst bankruptcies you have handled in your 40 years of legal and restructuring experience. Under Mr. Bankman-Fried, FTX had almost no record keeping, risk management, or accounting. In fact, FTX had 0 accountants on their payroll. Mr. Bankman-Fried explained to Bloomberg Businessweek that FTX's accounting was done by him, and in his head, quote, "I was real lazy about the mental math. The complete lack of any basic record keeping makes it difficult to track down assets and untangle this mess." Are you aware of any additional wallets the co-founders potentially have access to that contain debtor assets?
No, we're not.
There's also been very little attention to the banks that FTX had a relationship with. I don't know that I've heard about any questions today, but the ties between FTX and Farmington State Bank began in March when Alameda Research invested $11.5 million in the bank's parent company, FBH. Do you have any insight or additional information as to why a small agricultural lending bank with really no footprint in fintech or crypto has a relationship with FTX?
No, that's subject of our inquiry. I mean, we do know, obviously, we made that investment.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You've also stated that Alameda's business model as a market maker required deploying funds to various third-party exchanges, which were inherently unsafe and further exacerbated by the limited protections offered in certain foreign jurisdictions. To your knowledge, are any of the FTX co-founder or their family members affiliated with third-party exchanges that received funds from Alameda?
We're certainly investigating that. It's going to take some time to dig through that, but that's clearly a part of our focus.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming here today, and I'd like to yield the balance of my time to the ranking member, Mr. McHenry.
I yield back. Thank you.
Coincidence, or just that that you know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't uh, uh, Maxine Waters want this gentleman to speak. Now, she did come out and start saying, well, if you want to miss votes on the floor, and he's like, hey, you know what? Like, making it about that, but I don't think it really was about that. I almost felt like she knew he was going to mention this, and she tried to silence him because she didn't want it getting out that that particular bank that I had heard about from you. Thank you, Amber. It was the only person that I've heard about that bank from. And once again, I'm sure there was a lot of other people out there reporting on that. There's been people doing amazing work on this. Monica Perez, of course.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, so part of it is I see ties back to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation over and over again throughout all of this, throughout the Center for Altruism, through the University of Oxford, all the MIT, Princeton, all the different Ivy League connections between the mom and her philanthropic political work has deep ties to Washington State. You've got a lot of money coming through, and then you've also got now Patty Murray, who also received donations, is number 3 now, 3 in line to the presidency. So, and then you've got Susan Del Bunny, straight out of Microsoft, going to most likely become DNC chair. So these are huge connections, huge pushes of money that they were getting kicked back and paid back for to be able to do this, because nobody in their right mind would start a business in Washington State. We have the most aggressive tax system in the entire country. So unless there's a big enough payout to get past that, you just let that go. But there's also rumors, there's the amphetamine use. There's also rumors he was on some drugs for Parkinson's, that one of the side effects off use topics is sex addiction and gambling, which also sounds like the president's son.
Yeah.
So I think these things are used in connection to control and gain systems.
What would you label or call the type of practice that the family is into? The SBF's SBS, what do you call it?
Money laundering.
No.
No. Oh, there's the altruistic,
yes.
Center for Altruistic Excellence.
What is that? Yeah, can you give us a little bit more insight
Yeah,
about that?
so that is, let me pull up the site. It is a like a think tank. It's almost like the Rhodes Scholars. It's this, it's a very, I would say, left-wing embraced political notion that if you have extra to give, it's taking mutual aid to a corrupt level of investment. This is the Bill Gates way. This is the philanthrocapitalism. And so and Whitney Webb did a wonderful article and really dove deep on the Center for I think it's Altruistic Learning. And it's absolutely, Center for Effective Altruism is they're literally out of Oxford in the UK. And we know the context of, well, if you're a Rhodes Scholar, you're going to get this job and you're going to be in charge of this. And it's the same thing. They had all these different ties. There's ties to King Charles through the Center for Effective Altruism. There's all kinds of links with their logos, back to Rockefeller, back to the World Economic Forum. This is the you give to the right people to do the right things if you have a little extra to spare.
Gotcha. What is this here? What you got up next in the doc? It says crypto bosses flex political muscle with a 5,200% surge in U.S. giving.
Yeah. So I mean, this is literally massive. This was part of this center. It wasn't just Sam Bankman-Fried alone giving donations. It was a whole school of thought. It was talked about at different staff meetings, and there was whole conferences. They put on events, and so this is more pay to play, shoulder rubbing. If you're gonna help fund, I mean, what they pay like $5 million for the big hit piece for the anti-ivermectin post in the New York Times. Like, they were paying big money for this shit. So it was, it's all about community health. It's all about the environment. It's put your money behind us because we care more.
Who is Bruce Reed?
Bruce Reed was one of the other guys that SBF and his brother. So not only did SBF go to the White House 8 times in 2022, but his brother went there a handful of times. And his brother is the one who's doing the COVID and science work. And some of the work connected to that is like puts DARPA to shame. Let's just say it's not good. It's exactly the kind of genetic manipulation and technocratic takeover, that kind of scientific innovation they were funding. So Bruce Reed, if you pull on down, he was the CEO of the Democratic Leadership Council. He's an Idaho boy. He was an Al Gore speechwriter, worked in the Clinton White House, director of the Domestic Policy Council.
Tough on crime, help with the crime bill. Nice. That's who this guy is.
Yeah.
And this guy was going to visit. All right, cool. I see. Gotcha.
I mean, he co-wrote a book with Rahm Emanuel. Like, just these are the handlers,
And what was his connection between FTX and, or was he the connection between the brother and the Biden White House?
Both. So I think he met with both of them. But between him and what's the other guy?
Stephen Ricchetti?
Between Reed and Ricchetti, these guys were the handlers. This is your kind of K Street deep state, Podesta, the puppet masters.
Gotcha.
So these are the people actually making the decisions in the White House, not Uncle Joe. These are the real people. So they're just doing diabolical shit and putting a happy label on it. Honestly.
Yeah, it's crazy, the connections, and that's nuts. Thank you so much for some great reporting there. Anything else you want to leave us between the FTX scandal? We'll just do our last section of the day, or.
Yeah, I mean, I just, again, look into your own state, see what you can do locally to call these assholes out at every, chance you get. Start looking, dig into your universities. They're very well funded by very terrible people at every turn. And until the masses of us stop believing in these institutions in our country and change what's happening, they're going to keep controlling us, either through politics, through labels, through divisiveness, or literally, at the very down. So yeah, tons of Rhodes Scholars, lots of Rhodes Scholars in these things. It's just
tons of rogue scholars, a lot of people connected to all these things, whether it be connections to DARPA, whether it be connections to the White House, connections to
WHO.
I mean, they're all connected. Like, everything is connected. It just, and the FTX scandal, more information comes out every single day. It is crazy, but it was a big, like you said this from the get-go. This is a planned thing. This is a controlled demolition. This went down on purpose. The timing is not unusual, because they wanted to wait until after that election to make sure they can get all that money out. Wow, crazy stuff, Amber, and I'm gonna just keep keeping an eye on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I will. Don't worry. I like receipts.
All right, let's get to our last topic of the day, ladies and gentlemen, because I've been wanting to do this for a little bit. I haven't got a chance to do it because I thought there would be some significance to talk about when it came to the Kari Lake decision. Now, if you guys don't know, Kari Lake got denied going to trial. They had a 2-day hearing in which they called witnesses and testified. If the word chain of custody was used quite a bit, right? If you heard the word chain of custody, and if you did the the Pee Wee Herman, if it was the word of the day, you would have been hearing yelled. And I was very happy about that, because what they were trying to sell is the fact that they didn't have a chain of custody with all these ballots coming in. Let me see if I can find my notes, because in Maricopa County, and they talk about this, the numbers I want to talk about, which is like, you just can't have a fair election. In Maricopa County, they mailed out of 2.4 million eligible voters in Maricopa, which is the majority of the people in Arizona. It's that one county. 1.9 million got mailed out a ballot. 3 weeks before the election, and they had a week until after the election to keep counting. As you know, we got some onesies and twosies we're waiting on, he said, before we can do the counting. And when you have that many ballots out there, and I think literally out of the 1.9 million ballots that went out, I think maybe less than 900,000 were turned into Maricopa. So literally a million ballots from Maricopa, mail-in ballots, are just out there floating around. They're not accounted for or whatnot. So what the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors try to do, in the Maricopa County Recorder, and yes, there are two different things. The Board of Supervisors controls on-day voting. The Recorder controls early voting. They've muddied the water so much. They got one guy for early counting, one department for early counting, the other for a board. It's just ridiculous. I mean, he's in charge of early ballots. He had to go up there and explain this whole thing. We're going to jump into this. But when you have an election like that, you're never going to have fair results. Also, one of the big things they talked about, this is the last story of the day. I got distracted because I read something in the chat. I'm so sorry. We're going to jump right into this, but they're going to talk about how these ballots are distributed and whatnot. But they tried to prove that there was not a proper chain of custody. Let me say this. The chain of custody when it comes to elections, ladies and gentlemen, is not a chain of custody that someone, whether it be a county official or a city official, is keeping track of that chain of custody. They keep on saying the chain of custody is kept the whole way through from the time the ballot is mailed out to the time it's counting. That's a lie. Chain of custody in election sense means it's kept in the purview of the public. That's a fair chain of custody where it's in the public's eye at all times. It's not outside of the public's eye. That's the big thing. And that's something we have to get back down to and start talking about. Like when you mail these ballots off to someone else and it goes to this other company, I'm not relying on a company that's not even an elected official to keep my chain of custody. Chain of custody needs to be kept in the public's eye, not an official's eye. You know what I'm saying, Amber? Am I making that clear?
I just want to know if you're counting on Diebold, Dominion, and ES&S to count your votes for you, because that's who's counting them. Exactly,
and they have all these other third-party companies like Runback, in which I alerted to people. I said on a solutions panel, Amber, 2 months ago, we should start looking at who's making your ballots, because in the movie 2000 Mules, they tried to accuse Antifa-like candidates, ballot harvesters going around, going to nursing homes or homeless people and buying their ballots. That does happen. But the majority of the ballots, I was guessing, because it made very clear sense to me, were coming from the actual printing companies, the companies that had that sign these contracts to make the ballots. Whoever signs the contract.
That's like looking at educational textbooks too. Big scam. It's not to be trusted. And a lot of them, Washington makes a lot of paper products with our forestry products, and a lot of them are printed out of Washington State. So, it's not, I would love to have a great chain of custody, but until the software is open source, none of it matters to me.
None. And I really don't even think we should do that. We should have public counting and then open source software that double check the public counting and counting.
Yep.
I think that should be 100%. Done. I see that and see it all the times. This says, therefore, it is ordered confirming the election of Katie Hobbs. This is after the 2-day trial as Arizona governor-elect. The court notes the representations of the county defendants that the motions for sanctions will be forthcoming to the court. What happens is that for protesting the elections, the Hobbs campaign tried to really stick it to Carrie Lake and make her pay for reparations. I think she had to pay $30,000 in reparations. They were trying to hit her with $500,000. So that's just something to keep in mind. It didn't come through from what they wanted. However, that's that. Now, there's a couple great threads out there, but I want to go right now to the footage I have. And I want to go to a few things. I'm going to pull this up right now. Give me a second. But your thoughts on the whole fact that they try to stick Carrie Lake with reparations. Now, whether you like Carrie Lake or Katie Hobbs, it doesn't matter. For somebody protesting an election, for them to try to slap sanctions on them, that's a message. That's a message saying you don't ever question what we do ever again. And if you try to question us, whether you're an elected official, because she did it on behalf of the citizens. and telling the citizens that if you try to protest an election ever, we will slap you with hardcore sanctions. What do you think about that particular message that they try to send?
Well, they're doing that in every country, in every state. That's why you didn't have a recount here in Washington State either. Very similar situations with one of our state senators, and he didn't have the money. He had a RNC consultant eventually come in and talk him out of requesting an audit. So they want it to hurt, and so that that's not a viable solution if you don't have that money. That's exactly working out great for them.
So I got Viva Fry's video here. Let me pull it up really quick. I didn't mean to play it right away. Let me start it at this one point. All right, hold on one second, guys. This is some of the most, here's the thing. If this was a case, I told Fiorella, I said, Fee, if this was a case, after Stephen Ricker, his testimony here, he is the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. In other words, he's in charge of all early voting. But literally after about 5 minutes of his testimony, I would have said, stop, come here. All right, guys, you need to have another election. This is ridiculous what you're telling me over here. Listen to how he registered votes, because this is the things we have to look at. How do they register voters? How do they get on these lists? Because what they have in Arizona is an early voters list. Anybody who's eligible to get on this list. He explains how you get on the list. That's if you've ever, once before, ever requested a ballot, a mail-in ballot, ever before, you're automatically on that list. So that list is highly inflated. Used to be, before COVID times, is that to get a mail-in ballot wherever you're at, you would have to request it each cycle, each election. And I think that's fair if we have to stick with this whole system. And then you have to have proof about, that you're an actual citizen, where you're at, and all that stuff, to make sure you can get a ballot. You know how I feel. I don't even like the mail-in system. I hate it. But if we have to have it, it should be majorly limited and controlled. Take a look. He's in the bottom left-hand corner here, Stephen Richter. And anything to say before I play this?
No, just play it, and yeah, let's
get to it.
Is in running elections in Maricopa County. As mentioned before, I am responsible for registering voters. So intaking those, doing all the background checks, confirming identity, confirming location, maintaining the voter registration database, having that available at the cutoff date, which this election was 28 days before the election day. Ordinarily, that's 29 days before election day, but this year we had Columbus Day on the 29th day, and so it moved to the 28th day. On the 27th day, we mail out early ballots to all people who are either on the active early voting list or who have requested a one-time early ballot. That this general election was approximately 1.9 million registered voters out of the approximately 2.4 million registered voters overall.
I got to stop that really quickly, because you guys, right there, like that to me is like boom, 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 bells going off. Like, wait a second, what is this list? And this is something I was talking about with an election integrity activist that I knew. And he was telling me about this list. I'm like, how the fudge do we get this list? He goes, I don't know. I want to find the specs of the list. But I know that 1.9 million people out of 2.4 million eligible voters got a ballot 3 weeks before, 27 days before the election it was mailed out. I was like, you can't have an election like that. Literally over 75% of the votes that were turned in Arizona, I think, I got to find the final number, but around that, were mail-in ballots. If you have 10% mail-in ballots, you have a problem. Let alone 75% early, no chain of custody. Who knows where they're coming from, where they're going? Mail-in ballots. To me, right there, that was the smoking gun. And what people need to do now is that they have to figure out these rules and start demanding that if they have any form of mail-in balloting, that they have to request it every single cycle. No list. I don't even know how they keep this list. But literally, you're talking over 80% of the eligible voters get a ballot weeks before the election. How is this possible? They're laughing at us in other countries.
Oh no! So in Washington State, we have been a mail-in ballot. This is where mail-in ballots originated. This is why, the entire country is being Microsoft managed to death. It's there's a cast vote record that shows who cast their vote from the ballots. But yeah, you get your ballot in the mail. You get a very detailed voter guide that you have to submit your information like 8 months earlier, and they print it and sent you. Get this thick packet. You get your ballot. You fill it out. You can mail it in. You can throw it in the Dropbox. They're all taken. They're all put through the machines, and it really doesn't matter after that.
Yeah. I'm going to play a little
And they're
bit more of
seeing
this
it
video.
anomalies the whole time. And I'm not even, so to me, the chain of custody, having done mail-in ballots for so many years, it doesn't bother me as much. What bothers me is I think they didn't have their data correct. And so when a state doesn't have the correct data on who's voting what, then they need to physically dump ballots. In Washington State, they don't have mules here. They don't need them. They can just manipulate it all behind the scenes, and you never know.
Yeah.
And they don't share the information. And the same thing, Joe Kent, like I mentioned earlier, would have challenged this vote here in Washington State, which could have, again, made very different changes for the next, congressional cycle, and was talked out of it.
Yeah. And here's what Bill Bradley says: no early voting, no absentee ballots, must have ID. Listen, that is the rules in every single country I've visited in the global South in Latin America. That's the rules in Nicaragua. That's the rules in Honduras. There's 1 day of voting. It's a national holiday. It's expedient. It takes you less than less than 10 minutes to vote. We can do all this. This is one of the biggest scams out there. The fact that they tell you can't have free, clean, fair elections with result that night. That's the biggest scam. The oldest scam is keep the people divided and let the elites run off with all the money. But the biggest scam, because it's math. It's basic math. And they have this thing all twisted. And the thing that really sucks is they have a bunch of shit progressives endorsing this type of election system. So let me play a little bit more, because he'll talk about the chain of custody, ladies and gentlemen. You tell me if this is a fair chain of custody. Like I said, chain of custody is not keeping track of all the votes or the machinery or everything involved from an elected official. It's in the purview of the citizens. That's a chain of custody. The ballots are taken at the door when you go in. There are people allowed to stay there and witnesses. The ballots go into the ballot box when they're done. People leave. That room, it's cast where it's counted. That room will be counted. They'll take them out of the ballot box and count them right there. It stays in the public's eye the whole time. You can't see the person's vote, but you know that ballot is in there, and the system can't be manipulated, because when they open, you're allowed to expect everything. You're allowed to see everything to make sure nothing's in the box. So to cheat an election in Latin America, it's really hard. And here in America, it's easy for the ruling class, and they dupe you, and they openly say that these rules are there because they tell you, oh, we're providing accessibility here. This is about equity and inclusivity. We want to make sure the most vulnerable in our society, minorities, poor people, all of them, that they get a chance to vote. And it's like, not with these rules. And people buy into this shit, and they fucking say this shit. It just drives me crazy, because when you go to these poorer countries, they want more securities in place because they know that's the way the ruling class steals the votes. And we've allowed a system like this to go into play. And right now, people are playing team sports because they think it's okay, because it's about Democrats beating Republicans. But how many times have the progressives been screwed over, Amber, with these elections that we've witnessed? It's going to hurt them in the end.
It hurts all of us, because we don't have the liberty and freedom that we were all sold on. Yeah. We sold the world on the, the cheeseburger, the night, the drive-in movie, and the Happy Meal. And, now everybody gets a shit sandwich. It doesn't matter what you do. Diebold makes your ATM machine. Don't tell me there's an integrity issue. They know exactly whose fucking account you're taking it out of. And they know exactly where it's going. So, yes, the candidates are shit. The process is shit. We're not making any headway. I think there was three places in Alaska that actually called for open count, hand count ballots. So Alaska has ranked choice voting and now some hand counts. That's the only place in the country. It's going to take a while.
Now, they were really talking about all these things, Amber, about the printers. They had a wrong printing size. They had all these different ballots for different counties. That's what they do. They keep like I said, they muddy the waters. They make sure it's as complicated as can be. They have all these things. Well, we can't do like, hand counting in public because there's too many things to vote on. Yeah, well, that's done on purpose. You know what I'm saying? They don't split up your election days properly, and they don't give you a Sunday off where you can go and it's local and easy. They make everything hard and complicated on purpose. And it really sucks to have a whole bunch of people stand behind it. Let's listen a little bit more about the chain of custody, because to me, this was the smoking gun. A lot of people will still bring up all the printer tabulation issues, which there were. And that is also by design. Arizona has had this situation where they closed 70% of the polling stations in 2016. Remember that? The Bernie Sanders line, 7 hours to vote in Arizona. And what happened is that they had cut the budget, and a lot of Republicans, they didn't hold their party's chairperson accountable at the time, who was in charge of elections. They said they cut it on purpose. Well, she should have been sounding the alarm right there. When they cut that budget and they don't let you get all these voting places, they're trying to crash the system on purpose. And what do they do? Well, it takes too long to vote. Just take a mail-in ballot. How about that? And people go, yeah, give me it, because I can't wait 7 hours to vote. Let's take a look a little bit more about the chain of custody. We'll come right back to it.
In Maricopa County, we send those out. We are also responsible for all forms of early voting. That could include dropping off a ballot at a drop box. That could include dropping off a ballot at a voting location. That could include going to an early voting location, getting a new ballot printed. That's still governed by early voting laws, meaning it still has to go in an envelope. That envelope has to be sealed and signed, and it comes back to us. My office is also responsible for things like UOCAVA, which is Uniform and Overseas Voting. Now that begins actually 45 days under federal law before the election. We are not responsible for election day operations, emergency voting, which is the weekend before election day, or for ballot tabulation.
All right, and so those responsibilities lie with the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, correct?
That's correct, and that's true of all 15 counties.
All right, and so I believe you mentioned drop boxes. You are responsible for those and for ensuring that the ballots get from drop boxes to Maricopa County, correct?
That's correct.
And you testified earlier, you're required by law to maintain chain of custody. That includes chain of custody from pickup at Dropbox to delivery to Maricopa County. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Does that also include when they leave Maricopa County and they're delivered to Runback?
They never leave our chain of custody because they are with our personnel at all times. But yes, they go to Runback.
Okay. So are Runback your personnel?
No.
No, they are a third-party vendor, correct?
Correct.
You're the only county in the state of Arizona that uses a third-party vendor for intake of its ballots?
Maricopa County has been doing this since the 1990s.
My question
No
was a
answer.
simple yes or no. Are you the only county in
Yes.
the state of Arizona that uses a third-party vendor for intake of your ballots?
I bet it's a yes.
No.
Oh,
Okay. And so was your testimony just a moment ago with respect to my question on chain of custody with delivery of Maricopa County ballots from your custody and control at MC Tech to Runback, a third-party vendor, that they are not governed by chain of custody laws?
They are.
They are. And that would also apply to the return of those ballots from the third-party vendor Runback to MC Tech. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I follow, but
Chain of custody. Are you required to maintain chain of custody from third-party vendor Runback back to Maricopa?
by law.
chain of custody is preserved throughout all times.
That's
of
not
the
what he
early
asked
voting
you.
process. It's documented when it goes to Runback. It never leaves the site
not what
of
he
our
asked.
personnel. It's documented when it comes back to MCTEC. Correct.
So he's
Okay.
So
So
you're
you
required to.
document every transport of ballots from MCTEC to Runback.
Correct.
What kind of forms do you use?
It's a ballot transportation slip. It's a white form.
Does that include the total number of ballots you're taking to run back?
It does include the total number of ballots for early voting.
But does not for.
Okay, thank you. That would include election day ballots?
Election day ballots are treated a little differently.
It was
If you're
obvious from his
talking about
answer.
Election day ballots that are voted on site, those are under the domain of the Board of Supervisors. If you're talking about early ballots that are dropped off on election day, those all come to MICTEC first, where they are gathered, and then they are transferred over to Runback, where they are counted by our people at Runback because they have a high-speed counter, because that's the only day in which approximately 300,000 early ballots come in on one day.
Okay, is it your testimony here today that you, once election day happens, are no longer legally responsible for the ballots that are dropped into drop boxes?
Your Honor.
No.
Your Honor, wait just a minute, Recorder Richard.
I just need the Benny Hill music. And it goes to mid-tech, and it goes to run back, and then it goes back to us again. And then it goes over here, and it goes over there, and it goes in here, and it goes over there, and who knows how many ballots there was, and who even voted.
That's the only day their high-speed machine works, Pasta. Come on. It's the only day.
It's just crazy, right? And I gotta bring this up right over here, because the big piece of information they had, right? The big, like, oh, we got them now, is that they had a whistleblower from Runback that was going to come on over and say, whoa, well, here, I'll just play it right now. Take a look at this here. They had a big whistleblower. They got him. They were talking about Runback. And then I'm going to play a couple videos that I had just recently of how many times, Amber, I've been screaming about, would you look at the contracts?
Yes.
Somebody,
oh my God. If anybody finds
the
the contract, it should be public knowledge. It should be in the public domain. I am a contracts girl. Find it. I will analyze it in a heartbeat.
So you can see what it said here. I'm going to play the video right after. It says, Christina Bob, you have a whistleblower from Runback, the ballot company, that said approximately 300,000 ballots were illegally inserted into the tally. Not coming from drop boxes, not coming from polling locations, just being brought in by employees. It's on one of my favorite shows, The War Room. But let's
you've got an expert.
I'm gonna mute me up. I'm gonna play this real quick, and then I'm gonna play a video that I said like a couple months ago about Runback. Here we go.
Witness saying you've got an expert witness saying that an expert who has certified these machines for the last 9 years, saying that they're lawful to use and that they're in good working condition, saying that the error that occurred on election day, because we saw how many Republicans were disenfranchised because over half the machines broke on election day, that error was intentional. You have a whistleblower from Runback, the ballot company, that says approximately 300,000 ballots were illegally inserted into the tally, not coming from drop boxes, not coming from polling locations, but just being brought in by employees, not within the lawful chain of custody. I mean, there's so much evidence in this case. I don't see how a court can dismiss it.
So, you know, I mean, yeah, Donald Trump's lawyer, and I hated the fact that there's so much.
So I think Kerry survives on Monday, but we'll see.
Sorry. I hate the fact that it's Bannon and all, these other people that are bringing it up, but I'm thankful that it's somebody who's bringing it up. But here, I just want to play a quick video of something I said at an election integrity event at the Solutions panel next to Patrick Burns and Tim Canova on stage not too long ago. Take a look at this real quick.
The last thing I want to talk about, because it hasn't been talked about much today, I heard one time a company named Runback was mentioned, right? Nobody knows who Runback is? Okay. We also have to, that's one thing that was void of 2,000 Mules. They didn't look at who makes your ballots. They didn't look at the contracts. And if you look at these contracts, they'll really make you scared. What they can do. What's the chain of custody when they mail out a ballot and that person's dead? Where does it go? Where does it get back to? Well, basically, the bottom line is whoever hires that contract, that's who that contractor works for. In the case of California, it was Alex Padilla many years ago. He signed the contract. Hey, we don't need to get ballots made out of bamboo from China when we got the contractor right down the street. So look into who is making your ballots. Thank you, guys.
I don't know. I told them the company months before it happened, right? What more can I do over here, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you that this is where the fucking problem is? It's right there. I was like, go look at me. I said, go look at Runback. Go look who's making your ballots. And I've done this before on so many shows for quite some times. I even wrote an article about 2,000 Mules who didn't even mention the contracts. Instead, they wanted to blame Democrats and Antifa because that's their job, to keep everybody divisive. Your thoughts on the whole contracts and these people making the ballots? I mean, isn't it easy to fix an election? Can't Washington, their elections be fixed because we don't know who's handing out ballots behind closed doors?
No, we cannot get that proprietary software. The other thing, I just threw a link in the bottom of the
I
doc
see that.
about
Yes.
all of the patents that Runback has, and they have they also have some deep ties to the Georgia election. I mean, they're a Georgia company. So they've been pushing for a long time at all of this, but it's the same, you know, it's again, Diebold. So you've got all those financial interests of these, you know, of the American corporate class, you know, to make sure that they get their man and all that money.
There's so many different, you can see that they have all these patents. They get the, you know, Runback works hand in hand with Diebold or Dominion or all these other companies, because the machines that count our ballots, they need to okay, or, you know what I'm saying, they get to pick the printers too as well. And these contracts are multi-million-dollar contracts. I mean, we want to talk about the wheels getting greased. The wheels are getting greased. One thing I do want to point out, because I thought it was really there's two more things I want to point out really quickly, because we have to get to Scott Jarrett's testimony really quickly. Scott Jarrett's position is, and I got it right here. Let me see. Sorry.
I'll try and get this in the chat for everybody. They can have a little fun with Runback. And Happy New Year's, everybody. Don't let this just this get you down to think we can't fix something.
1,615 election day turnout figures. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Did that take into account the problems you just mentioned in terms of the?
What the specific question?
So was the election day issues that we just discussed, and by the county's own admission, occurred at 70 vote centers?
70 vote
Was
centers.
that event factored into, or an event like it, factored into the second forecast model?
So first, let me clarify. I didn't acknowledge that there were 70 vote centers that had printer issues. I acknowledge and asked technicians the 70 voting locations.
Thanks for the distinction there. Distinction without a difference.
Historical models turn out. There was no analysis to include if there was an issue on site at any voting location.
So there was no analysis in the second forecast model of 251,000 projected turnout that took into account a disruption in the election on election day, November 8th, 2022.
None of the forecast models include that type of.
Makes total sense.
Would a disruption such as what was experienced, I mean, would you agree with me that there was a disruption on November 8th, 2022 in the election?
I would say that we had some printers that were not printing some timing marks on our ballots dark enough to be read in by our tabulation equipment.
Would you call that a
Voters
disruption?
had legal and ballot options to still be able to participate within our voting locations. So I agree, and would not couch it as a disruption.
So you don't believe that what happened on November 8th was not a disruption in the election process?
Zoom in more. Add flames.
I do not couch it as that.
Are you aware that Supervisor Gates came out on election day and said 20% of all vote centers were affected by these issues
Problems with the
ballots being
tabulators.
rejected by the tabulators?
Oh, I'm aware of that.
Again, we didn't have ballots rejected by tabulators that were not being read in by tabulators.
Sorry,
And
he
that's
actually.
not a disruption when voters still had valid options to participate.
Oh, what, to go
in
drive to
dropping in
another
those
center?
ballots in our secure door number 3, which is a similar process that 8 other counties use as their only option for voters to be able to return their ballots.
Yeah, Mr. Jarrett, you're not answering my question. My question isn't what other options existed for voters. My
Is that
question
a
is,
disruption?
would you agree that there was a disruption of at least 20% of the vote centers in Maricopa that caused delays in the voting process?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has already answered this question
Oh,
as to whether he characterizes it as a disruption.
It's a different question.
I'll overrule. If you can answer
That's
it,
right.
you may, sir.
Good, good, Judge.
I'm not changing my response.
Okay. Is it,
Nothing better than not changing your response.
do you
with
believe
true
that
facts.
did you hear of any reports of wait times to vote of over 60 minutes?
Yes, I did.
Do you call that a
And is-
disruption?
what is the target wait time for in your model?
20 minutes.
Do you know?
On average, a half an hour.
Okay. Do you call an hour wait a disruption? No, because they still have a chance to go drive to another location if that
Let's
one
turn
works.
to Bait stamped 047. It's page 17.
Page 17. Page 17.
I can't do any more of it. Like, that was the back and forth. It was like trying to say, they had all these issues where they had a 19-inch ballot posted on a 20-inch paper that wouldn't be read properly. They all these different types of ballots. They keep the system as confused as can be, so therefore they can get away with all this shit that's going on. I mean, and we as citizens just got to go out there and demand fair elections. I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm not looking for anybody to save us, but the more we know and the relevance of this case, because getting to have a court case like that was kind of cool, Amber, because it's not usually out there. These cases are denied. Now, this was a hearing to see if they have if it was going to court, so they had a little 2-day kind of like trial where they were able to get all this information out there, which I think was so important. You also put this up here too as well. I'm going to bring this up. The last thing you put, the common denominator. I mean, our elections are just shit, ladies and gentlemen. We have to do it. What do you got over here?
They really are. So this is the common denominator between Arizona and Georgia elections, and not the only states. I'll just say that to start with. But they literally have a patent that tells you how they're going to take the image and create a duplicate that's easy for interpretation.
Yeah.
I mean they're not quiet about this. We're just not putting the pieces together. It's so poorly, and Runbeck's been in, I would say hot water, being investigated for years for bullshit. So the fact that they just keep funneling money, oh well, they're the best, they're the only ones. If you only make 1 or 2, then that's easy control for both parties, and they're gonna pump all their money into it.
They're the protected class too, as well. That these companies,
100%.
they are protected. They are the protected class. Unfortunately, we get to take it on the nose. But that's the irrelevancy of that court case. The one thing I did not like is that it was funded by Lindell, and I couldn't stand that. I wish they would have threw up like Give Send Goes. Try to fund it that way, because when Lindell and a lot of other guys, they go and they start to blame China for this shit, and they lose all the freaking. The air just gets set out of the room. It's got nothing to do with China. Our election system is the way it is because we allowed it to become this way over many years, and we have to start blaming ourselves and cleaning our own house rather than pointing the finger at somebody else. Stop pointing the finger at Hugo Chavez or China and this other thing.
That's easier to do, though. I mean, honestly, every other country in the world would be much happier if we had free and fair elections, because they wouldn't get fucked with so much.
Yeah.
But that's not in the interest of the party politics. And I just saw an article put out yesterday about how Pompeo's really pushing up the anti-China rhetoric as well. That, oh, well, we're letting Chinese citizens with COVID into the country. Well, they did it last time. They're going to do it again. I mean, this is exactly how they want. This is how they're exacerbating control and nuclear proliferation in, the North China Sea and in Australia with all of the new nuclear submarine bases, so that we, have more control over that continent as well. They're pushing for this agenda, and it's because they went in the 50s, Bechtel and beyond, and put their money in China, that they have the financial classes tightly controlled over there. The people, not so controlled, as we're seeing, especially with this COVID bullshit. But the fact that they keep playing this game when Pompeo absolutely knows where the hell this came from, and it was his State Department funding. So it's just this is a game that's being played. Don't fall into the party bullshit. Stay independent. Protect your personal liberties. Work in your communities, and cut through this shit. We've got to cut through this shit.
Yeah, I that's great. I'm glad you said that, because don't fall for the party. But they're trying to move you in a certain direction, right? It's remember Iraq. They were so fucking absurd. They were so outlandish that you just wanted to go vote for Democrats because they were so ridiculous to conservatives. Now it's the opposite. Now the Democrats are so ridiculous that a lot of people are, I'm voting for the conservatives, but that's what they want. They want to move you into either side, and they're using elections to do so. I mean, like I said, Lindell did fund this thing, and I am thankful that he's.
You like his slippers? Come on.
I do have slippers. My mom bought me the slippers. I got those Lindell slippers. Those things are freaking comfortable. His pillows are great, and I mean, but when he starts saying China, and I'm like, dude, and also they fall prey to the same game. If they don't like what somebody has to say that's not on their team, they do away with them. You know what I'm saying? Rather than have some critical, independent thinking, and that's what's really important. And just taking accountability for our elections and taking some accountability to get them straight. So we got a lot of work to do. So, and that's it. But Amber, I want to thank you for coming on the Convo Couch today. Almost 2 hours. We're about to wrap it on up. I do want to show a picture over here and send some love. The fallen one, that is our cockatoo. There's Peaches. He was so beautiful, and we're going to miss you, Peaches. You will be missed. He was such a funny bird. I do also have a clip really quickly I'd like to show as well of Peaches, and we're going to use it to play us on out. Amber, what do you got going on with Roar Media, Brave New Future? Anything coming up soon?
Well, I've got some great new guests lined up for Brave New Future. I go every other Friday. I'm on Rockfin, Odyssey, Twitch, Rumble, a few other places. Definitely not on YouTube's because they'd kick me off in a heartbeat. But I've got some great guests. I've got Libby Lahalevi with the Nuclear Hot Seat joining me on the 13th. Very excited about that. I've got I'm lining up. I'm trying to get better at lining up guests. It's so hard. I work full time. I got crazy teenage kids. It's a busy world. I get it. So I wish I could do more regular appearances, but I'm just eking out what we can, but we're trying to build Road Media, and Shanda's holding the fort down, doing her own shows now. And Oz and her are still kicking ass on Beauty and the Boomer. And, we're trying to make that nonprofit of additional independent media work for itself. I'm still doing lots with Seattle for Assange, and interesting to see some of the anti-war events coming up. But looking forward to continuing to support the causes, and I'm an activist first, a mother second, and like to read the inner workings of patents and contracts in the meantime. So looking to do some travel and get our ground game going. So yeah,
well,
lots happening.
Free Thinker left a super ray over on the Rockfin. Just got here, so starting from the beginning. So we'll be behind in the chat, but I love the Convo Couch. And Ms. Amber King, Happy New Year to all my buds here too. Thank you, free thinker. The Super Ray contributions always appreciated. The couch. Vicky Lynn in the house, hanging it down with Fred Edwards over on the Rumble. We love you as well. I wonder if we're going to get in trouble today for talking about this on YouTube. That's kind of crazy. We showed a little bit of Peaches. I'm going to play this video. Peaches, we love you. We will miss you. We love you, Lucky. Hang in there, kiddo. We know what it's like to lose a family member. That's it for the Convo Couch today with Amber King, Pasta Jardula. Catch Fee on Wednesday. I won't be here. I have to go on Sam Tripoli's show. I'm going to talk about Brazil. I'm going to talk about communism and Marxism and all that other stuff and what I've witnessed and what's going on, because I do believe, honestly, that the anti-communist movement is simply to separate and be divisive to us. I don't advocate for communism. I advocate for the acceptance of communism. If a country wants to do it, it's up to them. We had on Angela McArdle. We had a great panel the other day. We had Angela McArdle, who was the Libertarian chair, Mel K from the Mel K Show, who's a America First, a Trump supporter, and also Don DeBar, who's a Marxist. We had them on in the same panel. It was a great discussion. Yeah. I love what Angela McArdle had to say. She goes, being mad at a country for being communist is like being mad at your neighbor for being gay. It's none of your business. You shouldn't be mad. And furthermore, I added on the fact is that we force these countries into a collective government because the empire is on their necks. So they join together just to get rid of that empire. So it's our fault in the first place. But that's it for today. We love you, Amber. Thank you so much for coming on.
Start your gardens. Get your seeds
gardens.
out.
Check out Roar Media and all the fun they got over there. What's up to everybody in the chats today? We love you. We're going to leave you with a little video from Peaches. Convo out. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Thank you so much.
The stalker.